Hello, welcome to the Shelly Show. So let's start. I'm Shailendra, and you're watching the simulcast live on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Hope you're safe and maintaining social distancing. For you to view this episode and other sessions that are on emerging technologies live, I would request you to follow me so that you get an alert when the live session is on. This gives you an opportunity to directly ask questions from our guests. So please press the follow button down there on LinkedIn and Twitter, and please smash the subscribe button on YouTube. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, a couple of weeks ago, when Bill Inmon, the father of Datawarehouse, was here for the first time, he promised that he'll be back to talk about what is new and what new and exciting things he's doing, and what next after Datawarehouse. So we also touched on how the structured and unstructured data needs to come together, and there is a lot of opportunity around it. So without wasting any time, I don't need to introduce Bill. You all know him. Let me bring him, Bill Inmon, the father of Datawarehouse, to the Shelly Show. Hi, Bill. Welcome.
Hi, Shelly. How are you doing tonight?
Very good, Bill. Thank you. Thank you for coming back to the show.
Well, thank you. I apologize for my computer going down, but it decided to die, and it had its own way. I apologize. Maybe we should get Bill Gates in here to tell us what happened.
Okay, no, that's fine. As long as we are here and we're doing good, it's all good. Okay. So, Bill, we were talking about Data Warehouse. We talked about Data Warehouse Cloud, data marts, and then the question came around last time when we were on the show around what next. What next is to happen? And so can you just explain to us what you're doing and what next is in the pipeline?
Well, surely. Let me go back a few years. And a few years ago, I was doing Data Warehouse, as you know, and one day I was puzzled by something. I looked around the corporation, and in corporation after corporation, the data in the corporation was primarily in the form of text, and I thought it was really kind of strange that all of this work and all of this technology was focused on what amounted to a small amount of data in the corporation. And I thought that was very strange. I said, why aren't we using text in the decision-making process? And so it was at that point in time of asking that question of why aren't we using text for the purpose of making decisions, because I said, it's kind of strange. If I held in my hands all of the data in the corporation, we were only looking at and using a small percentage, maybe 5% of the data in the corporation. 95% of the data in the corporation was never being looked at. And so that led me to the question, why? And what can we do about it? And so what I've been doing for the past really 15 years or so is looking at the question of how do you start to use text in the corporation in order to make better decisions in the corporation.
But does it not mean that we need to bring in the unstructured or the textual data, the comments in the text, and join them back to the structured consumer information that we have in the data warehouse? Doesn't that mean that?
We can do that if we can even bring the text in. Text is like an infant. A pair of people have a child, and that infant behaves the way it wants to behave, not the way you, the parent, want it to behave. And it has a mind of its own and its own agenda. And so before you can start to take the data that's in your data warehouse already, you've got to first come to the issue of what to do about text. And it's a very, very text is a very complex subject. Let me tell you the most complex part of text. When you start to get to deal with text, the most difficult part of text is not text itself, but context. And we have context with data today, and we typically talk about metadata and things like that. But the truth of the matter is, context is almost an afterthought. But when it comes down to language, when we have conversations with people, the context of what we're saying becomes extremely important. And it's context that is the most difficult part of reading and understanding text.
Okay, that's good. Before we get onto this thought any further, I will let you know that there are around about 15 people who are watching us, guys. Please shoot your comments in the comment section and we will take them all. This is new for us and we're taking this to the next level. So, Bill, have you seen any use cases and success stories around text? Before we get into the technicality of it, I think it's a good idea to talk about a few use cases and success stories where people have used text and they've made a lot of influence, or they've made a lot of change in the organization. Possibly two, three of those will be good. And if you want to name the organizations, fine. If you don't want to name the organization, that's up to you. I leave it to you.
And that's fine. Shali, we actually have many very interesting stories about tech, but I think the most prominent one that we have relates to the shoe company called Nike. About 2.5 years ago, we had a friend of ours who was working for Nike. And my friend called me and told me that Nike had a problem. And the problem was that Adidas was starting to sell more shoes than Nike was. And they were wondering why. So we went out to the text that we could find on the internet. And we pulled out the comments from 5,000 Nike customers and 5,000 Adidas customers and started to analyze the text. And what we found was this. It turns out that Adidas, I believe, is a well-run company. They're very normal, very well-run. But when it came to Nike, over and over, if you looked at the comments of what customers were saying about Nike, the customers were saying, I bought my Nike shoe. In 3 weeks' time, the sole separated from the shoe, and now Nike won't replace my shoe. They were expensive, and I won't ever buy Nike again. So what we did was we took that information, put it into the form of a report, and sent it back to Nike Marketing Management. When Nike Marketing Management got hold of it, they said, "Oh my gosh, this is embarrassing. We can't let anybody see this." So we then sent a copy, a nice letter, and a report to the president of Nike. And so we talked to Nike, and we said, we're an independent third party. Here's what we found by looking and talking with your customers. And the president of Nike sent us a letter saying, "Dear Mr. Inmon, Nike listens to certain consultants. You're not one of them. We don't ever want to hear from you again." And so there wasn't anything we could do about it. However, about a year later, there was a famous basketball game in the United States. Duke University was playing North Carolina. They had the largest TV audience in the history of basketball. Even the President of the United States attended the game. It was a very big deal. And in the first 60 seconds of the game, the Nike shoe that the Duke player was wearing burst in two and injured the Duke player. And in 2 days' time after that incident, Nike stock dropped by $2 billion. Now that's an extreme case, but had Nike paid attention and listened to what their customer was saying and taken the information found in text and done something with it, then their stock would have not suffered the way that it did. Now we actually got quite a few other stories. This is only one story of many, but in terms of being, you talk about business value, losing $2 billion, not million, $1 billion is something that is rather dramatic. So that's one story. We actually got quite a few more.
Okay, before we get to the next story, and this is very, very interesting, I just want to understand when you were analyzing that data, the text data, was that data from various reviews or whether that was from the complaints? Where was that? What was the source of that data?
We went out to the internet and you simply it's really easy to do. People put their you can find it today. I mean it's not secret. It's out in public. It's very open data and it belongs to everybody. So we went to the internet and that's where we got the data from.
Okay. I will not ask you what you did with it because I think that we'll take that in the next section because that is an important aspect of when you get text data, what do you do with it? But it would be great if you could share another story with us.
Well, certainly. We have another story. A restaurant chain, a good size in America. I don't believe this restaurant chain is worldwide, but in America they've got 200 or 300 stores in America. We went to them one day and we're talking with their management. And we asked them, do you listen to your customer? And they say, oh, yes, we listen to our customer. And I said, well, what do you do? And they say, well, on the table of our restaurant, on every table is a little form that people can write comments in and then send them to us. And okay, sounds good. And so they took the form. And in a month's time, around 50,000 of these comments would show up. So we said, oh, that's good. Then we asked management of this restaurant chain, what do you do with your customer comments? And they looked kind of embarrassed. They said, well, there are a lot of them. And we tried reading them, but a human being cannot read 50,000 of anything and make any sense out of it. So each month we print them off, we put them on the desk of this one vice president. They sit there, nothing happens to them, and the next month we replace that, we throw that list away and get the next month's worth of comments. And so we said to the restaurant chain, can you let us have those comments and we'll show you how to understand what your customer is saying. And they said, well, sure, I guess if you want to. So we took the comments from this restaurant, again, about 50,000 of them. And it turned out that there were some really amazing things that were to be found. The first thing that was amazing was that nobody ever, no customer ever said anything about price. Now, that's an interesting thing because when nobody says anything about price, it probably means that you're not pricing your product high enough. That if you raised your menu price by a nickel or a dime or a quarter for each item, your customers are still going to come in and you're going to make more money and people are still going to be happy. So the first message was you're not charging enough money. That's one thing. The second thing we found was in terms of promotions. This particular restaurant chain did promotions, but it turns out nobody said anything good or bad about the promotions, that nobody even noticed the promotions. And so we said to them, to management, we don't know what you're doing for promotions, but whatever you're doing is not effective. And so listening to what your customer has to say and understanding that, number one, you're not charging enough money, and number two, you are not having effective promotions. That was extremely valuable information for the corporation, and it was what they were throwing away every month.
Okay, that's interesting. And I think each one of us have had some kind of a good or a bad experience. And I think it's a good time for our audience to share any of their experience they've had so that we also see what's going on in the market. So guys, whosoever is watching this episode, if you've had a poor experience at a restaurant or a product where they are capturing information, they're capturing your comments, your feedback, please let us know and please explain what it is, and I'll take it up here so that we know there are organizations who are collecting information, but they're not doing anything with it. So please feel free to write that in the comment section and we will take that. And maybe that's a good opportunity for that organization to understand. Okay, that's good. Bill, two use cases. One where they would have saved $2 billion to the stock price, and the other where they were not doing anything with the information they had. What do you do when you get all that information? So, for example, I'm a large corporate and I've got all that information lying on the internet, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, everywhere. Once you get access to that information, what do you do with it? Can you just get into a bit of technicalities onto it, and also share with us what kind of tools are available at the moment that people can access, and if there is anything free they can use, even better.
Okay, certainly. Now, the subject of how do you do textual analytics is a very complex subject. There's no question about that. I don't want to get into what our industry has done because our industry track record of dealing with text has not been a good track record. But when you get in all of this textual information, you need to look at such things as sentiment that's been expressed. You need to look at, in the case of a restaurant, the menu items. In the case of an oil company, you look at how oil is produced. Whatever the business of the company is, you look at. You take in the case of a restaurant, for a month's worth, we took in 50,000 comments, read the comments, and then sorted them through as to what people liked and what they didn't like. We organized them according to the type of comments. Some comments were about the product. Some comments were about the cleanliness of the restaurant. Some comments were about the waiter and the waitresses and the cashier. The comments were about everything. So you organize the comments according to what they are about. You organize them according to whether people like something or don't like something. And then you create a database for them. And once you create the database, then you can take something like Tableau or Click or Yellowfin or any of those tools that do that kind of analysis and do a standard analysis on it. Um, now you're getting into a subject of complexity. Text is, you can't believe how text is complex. And there's a lot of reasons why text is complex. One of the reasons why text is complex is we have certain words that are spelled the same but mean something different, or
Yep.
words that are pronounced the same but mean something different. And I mean, there's all, and we have intonation. When somebody's mad, they say one thing, and then there's slang. People have slang terms, and people have misspellings. And I mean, there are a million ways that you've got to be able to interpret those million ways appropriately and properly. And we have been working on. There is a product that we have that is in the marketplace now called Textual ETL that is able to read text, understand text, and put your text into a database. Yes, there are commercial products now. Now there are other commercial products that are out there, but the other commercial products tend to be very expensive and are very complex. For whatever reason, textual analytics has been and has been a very academic way of doing things. And I've got a lot of friends of mine that are in academics, but all of them know a lot of theory. But when it comes to actually building systems, they've never really ever built a commercial system before. So anyway, yes, there are products out there, and there are products out there.
Okay. One more comment on or a question on that. How do you tackle phrases? So what happens is you've got a word, but that could be a phrase as well in itself, and that phrase could mean very different to what a word individually would mean. How do you deal with phrases?
Okay, there's actually several components to doing textual analytics. One is the taking apart of the text on a word by word basis. And I believe everybody's got to do that. But then there is, once you've looked at words, then you've got to look at the structure of those words. And typically that's done in terms of sentences.
Mhm.
So so the first step is to look at the word. The second step is to look at the sentence. Third step is to look at the body of the of what's being said in the text itself. And now all of this is complex. And I mentioned we've been working on it. We've been working on this 15 years. It's not something that you can sit down in an afternoon and just figure out.
Okay. So the next component to that is, and I was asked that question, and I'm asking it because I was asked once upon a time, around about 6-7 years ago, where people wanted to, where the organization wanted to understand the the sarcasm in the content in the text.
Yeah.
So, for example, I get onto a call with a call center, and I'm not very pleased. And at the end, they ask me to explain my or share my feedback, and then the feedback is not very good. So I can turn around and say a few things. I can say it was not very good. That's a normal sentence, but good is a positive word. So you're saying not very good. That's one thing. But I could turn around and say, yeah, very good job. which I meant actually that it was not a good job, but I said it a good job. So when you take it in the textual context, what you will find is that it's a positive sentiment, whereas if you turn it around, it would be a negative sentiment, because that's what the customer meant and said, because his problem was not solved. How do you address those kind of issues? But before I go there, and you answer the question, I would request the audience to please ask your question and also share your stories where you have had a good or a bad experience, and also where the organization is collecting that information as well, but not doing anything with it. So there is an opportunity for them to improve. Going back to you, Bill, tell us about sarcasm aspect of it.
Well, let me give you an example. And again, this is an American example. This may not be something you do in Australia, but in America, the word bad is something that's negative. However, in certain communities, when something is really exquisitely good, they say, "Man, that's bad." And so that's an example of needing to interpret the word in a different fashion. And can do we know how to do that? Yes, we know how to do that. Now, do we do it perfectly? Is it something that, by the way, that's another thing, the word perfect. When you're dealing with text, you've got to understand that perfectionism is not something that you're going to do. That if you get your interpretation correct 90 to 95% of the time, that's really good. 5% of the time, you're probably not going to get it right. But the way that you would take the word bad in the context of meaning that's really good is you make use of things called taxonomies. And your taxonomy says when you hear the word bad used this way, it actually is a very positive comment. And so it's through the use of taxonomies that you're able to interpret. In fact, the term bad used as I'm describing is what we call a colloquialism, and every I assume every language has a different their own set of colloquialisms, but anyway, the way you do it is through the preparation and anticipation for it in the building of what you call the taxonomies.
Okay, so that brings to another use case that you may have in your mind to share. If you have any other use case to share.
Surely I've got more use cases than we have time for. Let me tell you another really important use case, and that is in the corporate call centers. Corporations after corporation has something called a call center. And this is where you can have a number and just dial the number, and you can talk to a representative of the company. And you can talk about anything you want to talk about. You can complain, you can ask a question, you can ask anything. And if you go to a corporation and say to the corporation, do you have a call center? Yes, we have a call center. Do you know what's going on in your call center? Oh, yes, we know what's going on in our call center. Well, what's going on in your call center? Well, we have 7,000 calls a day, and the calls last for 6.5 minutes. And you say, well, gee, that's interesting, but what are people saying in your call center? Oh, we don't know that. We have no idea what questions they're asking, what they're complaining about, or anything like that. And one of the more interesting things that can be done is to be able to take the information that is flowing through a call center, take it read it, interpret it, put it into a database, and then analyze the database. And in doing so, you can find out, in fact, what people really are saying in their call center.
Okay, but that brings the other aspect of text, that is voice to text, because most of that content is captured through voice and then slowly, and it needs to be turned into text before it can be utilized. Have you seen any of that done successfully, where voice to text and that text was utilized quite usefully?
Well, indeed, there is another technology that has to be used, and it's called voice to text transcription.
Mhm.
And there's actually a lot of companies out there that do voice to text transcription, and we've actually tested a lot of those companies. And the two companies that have been very successful in accurate transcription have been a company called Nuance. We really recommend Nuance. Or the other company that's got very good voice to text transcription is Zoom.
Mhm.
Both Zoom and Nuance have them. We tried IBM's Watson, and it did not work very well. In fact, its accuracy was not good at all. We tried several other approaches. One other thing, you can always on voice to text transcription do it manually, but the cost of doing it manually is prohibitively expensive. Now there are some people that have got to do it manually, such as medical profession. In the medical profession, they will tell you that, Bill, if we get this transcription done improperly, somebody may actually die because of it. And if that's the case, then the expense of proper transcription is something that of manual transcription is something you can't avoid. But outside of the world of medicine and perhaps the world of military intelligence, everybody else does it in an automated fashion. And again, we work with all of the companies, but the most success we've had have been with Nuance and Zoom.
Okay. So you're taking the data from voice, then you're converting to text, then you're breaking that text into tokens, as they call that. Is that
Yep.
what they call them? And then tokens are then collected together to create phrases or sentences, depending upon what it is doing, and then representing to the customer, to the corporate
Right.
organization. Um, can I ask you a different question now? Is
Sure.
it a possibility somewhere where we can actually tie it back to the customer who's, so I'm maybe a customer who's complaining, and I think that is an important aspect of me complaining. So is that also attached back to the customer as well, or is it at a anonymous level that you do analysis, or what do you suggest? Should it be attached to the customer, or should it be anonymous?
You can do it either way, and
Mhm.
you can do it either way. And some companies, depending on what they're doing and what their data looks like, want it to be anonymous. And if you want to do it that way, you can do it that way. Other companies want to specifically to know exactly who that customer is, and quite frankly, it's very easy to do it either way.
Okay. And do you guys, or have you seen anywhere where Facebook, Twitter, social media data is also attached? Because I think that's a plain area where people can go in and complain or promote anything or say something good about a product or bad about any product.
Okay, you've actually asked a really complex question, because some sites, such as Facebook, do not want you getting on there and looking at their data.
Mhm.
So if I, as an outsider, want to go look at Facebook data, I normally can't go look at it. The only people that can look at Facebook data are the people in the corporation itself. And so if you're in the corporation, yes, you can go in and grab and look at your data. but if you're an outsider, you can't do it. And each on the internet, Google, Twitter, Facebook, all three of those have limitations on how much data you can get and who can get the data. Now, having stated that, there are a lot of other sites that it's much easier to get data from. But when people ask us, can we do Facebook? We can say, yes, we can do Facebook, but only if you go get your own data, get it, and bring it back to us.
Sure. That brings me to the other question. I just want to push that Nike story where you mentioned they lost $2 billion a bit.
Yep.
Now, have you tried or have you guys seen somewhere where you could translate or see the impact of a negative comment and turn it into dollars? For example, if I just turn around for a minute and then looked at that Nike story, if there were like 1,500 people who were complaining about the shoe bursting out, then could you associate it back to how much money that will impact? Well, of course, $2 billion is exorbitant, but if it was any, and how much time will it take for that to happen? Have you thought about those kind of analysis and work around when you do your work?
No, I'll be honest with you. We are so busy doing the analysis that in terms of the financial impact, we haven't had time to measure that. But I can tell you the customers that we have and the people we work with, believe me, they know that there is a very positive impact for their organization. But we're in the business of working with the text and the data. We just assume that once we finish, something good will happen. And apparently it does, because we are working with a lot of people.
Okay, good stuff. Guys, if you've got questions for Bill, this is your time to ask questions to him. And also, please state any kind of experience that you've had while you're at a restaurant or any particular product that you've dealt with and you've seen that they are collecting the feedback, but they're not doing anything about it. Possibly that's a good opportunity for them to understand that there is something that can be done. Okay, Bill, so we talked about data warehouse in the last episode, and now we're talking about unstructured data. Can this unstructured data or the data that you break down from text and bring it into a database, can this be stored together alongside within a data warehouse? Are there data warehouse fields that are available currently that can actually store that kind of information for a longer period of time?
Once you get the data broken down into the form of a database, it doesn't matter what database you store it in. You can store it in Oracle, you can store it in SQL Server, you can store it in Teradata, you can store it in Hadoop, you can store it in any of those. So the way you store it is actually neither here nor there. It's the work of getting the data into a form where you need it. Is where the real challenge is.
Okay.
So the database management system, as far as I know, all of the database management systems are perfectly capable of handling and storing the data.
Okay, brilliant. I would now like to take on the questions and the comments, and I will quickly jump onto Twitter, LinkedIn. I haven't had anything on Twitter or YouTube or Facebook. I don't know why. Maybe there is a issue with the connection, but I don't know. So let me just quickly jump onto LinkedIn to see if there are questions there, and maybe we can share some stories as well. So give me a sec, Bill, and I'll just open up LinkedIn. Okay. Here we go. There are 7 comments, so there is something. Let's start. So the first comment was from Mendu Chakrapani, and he says, hello to Bill. Hi, Bill, how are you? From
Hi.
Mendu Chakrapani. Uh, Ala Mahajub, he's asked a question, and it's very interesting. Hi, Ala, how are you? Thank you for coming back. You were there last week as well, I think. Thank you very much for coming back. He's saying, hi, Bill, how the 56,000 handwritten entries, or customer comments were entered to the computer?
How were they? Well, in the case of the restaurant chain that we were working with, they had a site where people just wrote them onto the site. It was Now, in some cases, getting them onto the computer is a difficult thing. In the particular case that I'm talking about, that was the easiest part, because when the way the restaurant worked was, they had a thing on the table. It says, "Give us your feedback for your restaurant experience." And to do that, you go to a site. And when you do that, they give you a number that allows you to have a discount on your next meal you had at the restaurant. So it was as simple as setting up a site and allowing people to say whatever they wanted to on the site. And again, they tied that back to the business by being able to give people money for coming back to the restaurant.
Okay, that is interesting, but I think his question was that if people had written on a piece of paper, feedback, then how did you incorporate? But if you hadn't done that, I think today the technology is such that you can even use a phone to scan, and it will convert the picture and identify the text and turn it into text. My Samsung phone does it, so there is a technology yalla there which actually does that. I think we have gone far ahead in the journey of converting handwritten notes into text. What do you think, Bill?
That's correct. There is technology called optical character recognition, otherwise known as OCR, and optical character recognition works well. What optical character recognition doesn't work on is things that are handwritten. As long as you have a font and type it in a recognizable font, OCR works well. But I'm not aware of, and there may be technology that actually can handle handwriting, but we haven't. I tell you what, if there is a technology that handles handwriting, please let us know,
It is
because
there. I have it. It's on the phone. So my phone, and thanks to Samsung for that. Um,
okay.
and I'm not sponsored by Samsung by any means. Thanks to Samsung for that, because what Samsung does is I could actually scan or just put a camera onto a picture, and I think
Yeah.
Google has the same technology as well. And when I do that, it actually identifies the handwritten text and extracts it and converts it into text properly. That
Well,
is
that's good to know. We've not run across that yet, but that's good to know.
So Google and Samsung actually use machine learning to train their models so that they can convert a handwritten text into a normal text, or a digital text. The other thing is, in fact, because this is Note 10, the latest version of Note series, when I write with my hand on the phone, it actually immediately converts it into digital text at the same
Okay.
time. So it is in real time identifying what I'm writing and taking that into and converting into digital stuff. So I think that technology is available at the moment.
Okay.
Good stuff. Okay, the next question is from Arvinda Nori. Hi Arvinda, how are you? And Arvinda is from. She's an IT project manager, and she says, interested to know how the textual comments were processed to derive the insights.
Well, it took us 15 years of development to figure out how to do that. Number one, you have to look at the words. Number two, you have to have a taxonomy to help you interpret the words. Number three, you've got to be able to take the words, organize them into a structure, usually the structure of a sentence. Once you have the words, the interpretation of the words, and the structure of the sentence done, then you can start to try to understand what's being said. And what I've just got through saying in the last 3 minutes has taken 15 years to do.
Okay. Good stuff. Arvinda, hopefully you've got your answer. The next question again from Arvinda, and she's saying, when you write comments, people use expressions or phrases befitting written format. Vocal expressions carry tone and nuance. And how do you look at that?
Okay, now that one is something that we have tried to do, but have not figured out how to do yet. That when somebody is mad, or when somebody is happy, or when somebody is has some very strong emotion happen, the best we can do is look at the words themselves. But how the words are said, we haven't gotten that far yet, and that will be for somebody 10 years from now that takes the work that we've done and extends it. But we look at words, but in terms of how the word is said, we really can't. I don't know how we do anything with that.
Okay. So the next question is from our old friend Angelo. Remember, he was there last time and he said he'll be here.
Hmm.
And Angelo Kulos, and he says, can we use AI and cognitive solutions to assist in textual analysis?
Yes, you can, but there's a problem, and the problem is that when you get into some of these deep academic systems, you end up going around in a maze. You end up doing things that are not business productive, and so yes, there are AI techniques. There's machine learning. There's a bunch of things out there, but throughout the entire exercise, you've got to ask yourself the question: where is the business value? And trying to get business value out of AI and cognitive systems. I'm not saying it can't be done, but a lot of corporations have spent a lot of money and haven't been productive. If you want to find out what I mean by that, take a look on the internet at a company called MD Anderson, which is a cancer clinic, and IBM's Watson, and find out how much money MD Anderson spent on AI and cognitive approaches with IBM, and find out what their experience was. And that's just the ones. These things happen all the time, and people don't talk about them. In the case of MD Anderson, they talked about it in public, and again, get on the internet, look up MD Anderson Cancer Clinic and IBM Watson, and find out how much money can you spend and what results might come from it.
Okay. Angelo, hopefully you've got your answer. If you've got any follow-up question, we're here. You can ask. The next comment actually is from Arvinda Nori, and she said exactly what you said. She said, Angelo, IBM Watson could be one option. And so this is what she was talking about. And Angelo says, thank you, Arvinda. Yeah, so that was the list of questions I had for you, Bill. I think people have got a good understanding of how textual information can be utilized and how it can be used. And I think we've spent our slotted 1 hour. If you've got anything you want to leave with the audience and you want them to know, this is your time. The floor is yours, Bill.
Sure. One thing I'd like for you to know, is we are currently doing a class over the internet on textual analytics. It takes an hour a day to do it. And it's free. It doesn't cost anything, and it takes 2 weeks to take the course. We are happy to have anybody in the world. Currently, we've had people from 37 different countries take the course, and again, it's free. Now, the current course we're having, you can't get on because you kind of have to start at the beginning. But we'll be starting in a couple of weeks another course. You can let me know, or you can let Shiley know, and he can forward the information on to me that you're interested in the course. If you want to contact me, I'm at bill.inman@forestrimtech.com. Or you can contact Shalindra, and he can forward the information on to me. And we'll be starting another course in about 3 weeks' time. And we've had, when we first started the course, I was amazed at the people around the world that we've had. We've had people from Fiji, from Montenegro, from Ukraine, from Ireland, from UAE, from Spain, from Germany, United States, Canada, Mexico, you name it, and we have a good time. So there is a free course on textual analytics that would be happy to teach you what you think you might want to know. And again, Shalindra you can contact him and you can let him know, or you can contact me.
Perfect. Thank you, Bill. What is that course called? What is the title of the course?
It's called Practical Textual Analytics, a masterclass.
Okay. One more thing we can do, if you can send me the link to the course, I can mention that in the comments and people can directly reach out to you through the link.
Okay, that would be fine.
Perfect. Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much for your time today. It was a pleasure having you back onto the show.
And Shalindra, my apologies for my computer going down at exactly the wrong moment. But I'm glad we could get on.
It happens, and we were just 3 minutes late. That's all good.
Okay, that's good.
Good stuff. Thank you. Thank you very much, Bill. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, guys, that was Bill Inmon, and he explained to us the next level of textual analytics and how it could be used. There are a few things that I have seen in the world that is happening as well from there. For example, the voice to text. There are lots of organizations which are turning voice to text, and they're looking at sentiment as well, and they're taking it to the next level. The handwritten text, handwritten information to be converted into text is also happening at the same time. I won't take it. I'll make another comment around SAP's SAC, which is the SAP Analytics Cloud, which actually takes written text and answers questions. So it actually takes the text and converts it into meaning out of it, and then answers the question from the database. That is also happening, and that's happening with SAP and Microsoft, and IBM Watson has been mentioned a few times, where the particular sentence is taken in and the context behind that has been understood and that has been answered. So the technology is moving quite quickly at a very rapid pace. We say that at a point in time, those databases where we used to query and write SQL for will not need to be written, will not need a SQL to be written for. You would be interacting with that in plain English language. You will ask the question and you will get an answer. And there's a very good friend of mine who's actually working on that technology, and his motto is to get away from writing SQL, but asking questions in plain English and getting an answer. His name is Saurabh Modi, and he's on LinkedIn as well. You could reach out to him. He runs a company called Alpha AI, which does exactly that as well. So there are lots of startups who are doing something on that side as well. So yeah, the chances are that you will get into many of those organizations. A lot of things will happen. And if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask me. On the other hand, I'll make sure that I get you the details of Bill Inman's course. If you reach out to me, and I can point you to the right direction. Also, I'll get the link to the masterclass and put it in the comment section so that you can directly go and join the masterclass. Thank you very much. That was my time for today. It was a pleasure having you, my audience, onto the show and watching this. I hope it made some sense to you and it was beneficial. I look forward to be back with you next Tuesday at same time, 3 p.m. with another guest. Please, in the comment section, if you know anyone you want me to be having on the show, please mention them and I will reach out to them to get them on the show. It is a very good opportunity for speaking to our guests and understanding their point of view in the emerging technology space. So please mention their name. And finally, please follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter and smash the subscribe button on YouTube. Thank you very much. See you next week. Bye now.